Please join me in welcoming Mary Beth Gregg to the stage.
Imagine it's 2 a.m. You own a successful company, you're in charge, but night after night you are tossing and turning, and you're worrying about what I call people drama. You've all experienced that, no matter if you own a company or you work in a company. You have somebody that just can't get along with somebody else, and they come in running into your office, screaming, they're red-faced. You have to fire this person. We just can't get along. He thinks he knows everything. And there's the other problems that you have. Somebody comes and complains, oh, the microwave's dirty. People are such pigs in this office. You hired somebody and they have a better title than I do, and their desk is bigger. How can this happen? And worst of all, somebody stole my lunch. You've all been there. And it's this undercurrent, this complaining, this not being able to get along. And as the owner, as the CEO, you've had it. You're tired of being a babysitter. You're tired of putting out the fires. Because what happens, it almost like it jumps from one person to the other. This ground swelling of wildfires of complaints and people not getting along. I've been called the team fixer in a good way. And I want to share with you a little bit right now some of that information and magic, because a lot of times you as an owner, you don't really understand what's going on. You can't figure it out. It's beyond you, but you know that you've had it. You wish you had an invisible cloak, or better yet, a quarantine sign on your door. Stay away. Well, I want to share with you a little bit about why this is happening. And most of the time, it's because people are working in silos. It's all about them. It's not about the team. So we're going to explore that a little bit in terms of what happens. I've had my share of incredible experiences and some not so good. So let me share one of the pain points right now. I work from a very well-known company, and they had very aggressive growth plans. They hired in top-notch people, and one of the people that they hired was a chief marketing officer. She was brilliant. She got things done. At what cost? And it was so interesting because outside of work, she was lovely. She came into work and this other creature came out. She would yell at people, berate them. Nothing was ever good enough for her. And when she got really angry, she would take her very high heel shoe off and throw it at the wall. I didn't make that up. That's a true story. You know, and it was like, how can this happen? And looking at it, well, the management, and I won't call it leadership, decided they needed her expertise. She was so good at what she did, it didn't matter how she behaved. The impact, obviously, people were hurt. You know, they would be sick almost in coming to work for her. There was high turnover. So there was a human cost and there was a business cost. In contrast, I want to tell you a little bit about what does work. I'm going to reveal a little bit of the magic and give you the inside scoop. I work for a great company called Häagen-Dazs. I told you I'd give you the scoop, right? It was great. Not only was the ice cream there for your taking in they had a little lunchroom and this big freezer chest of ice cream. You could have as much as you wanted. You know, you're 3 o'clock in the afternoon, you're tired. I'm going to have some chocolate. And, oh, the strawberry filled with fruit from Oregon, that was really yummy. They tried to say, well, you know, just watch what you're eating. So they put a little scale in the lunchroom next to the freezer. Well, you went in there and you thought, get on the scale? Nah, I'll have another scoop. So, you know, the product itself was great. But in addition to that, it was a wonderful place to work. And looking back at it, you know, you don't realize it when you're there, but what was going on. And it was about collaboration, valuing, and trusting people. what they did consistently, they would put you, if, for example, on a project team. Oh, we have an idea for an ice cream bar, or let's come up with a new flavor, rum raisin. And they would put you together, no matter if it was manufacturing and research and development, accounting, HR, and they wanted your ideas. They valued you. They wanted you to understand that, you know what, one person's opinion or focus maybe isn't the whole story. Let's get everybody's ideas. And what happened? You felt good about coming to work. You felt valued. You felt trusted. The communications were great. If you had an idea, nobody ever said, oh, that's a stupid idea. Never. They were open. They listened. Their listening skills were excellent. They looked you in the eye, and they felt you felt really good about working there. So that was an exceptional, but it was also a really good example about how that type of culture translated into business success. When I started working there, Haagen-Dazs was about $20 million. It started in somebody's kitchen. Haagen-Dazs is a made-up name. It doesn't mean anything. And it's interesting because people think it's this great Scandinavian. No, I mean, these people were from Brooklyn. And they came up, oh, Haagen-Dazs, that sounds great. But, this creation of value and trust and making people bring their best, that creativity, it went from $20 million to $350 million in just a few years. And now it's a $2.2 billion brand. And a lot of that really goes back to this foundation of teamwork and trust. So I think that's a really good, a lot of times people say, oh, well, that's the fluffy stuff. It's not the fluffy stuff. It's the hard stuff that is the example that happens when you do value people and you have your teams working together. I'm working with a client right now, and I've been really blessed. I do love all my clients. I learn so much from them, and just the interaction and willingness to learn just brings so much value and love. And this particular client, he's pretty frustrated right now. And he said, I've had it with this team. I want to fire them all. And I said, Chris, hold off a minute. Let's look at what's going on. So what happened was I brought them together, and it's difficult now because a lot of times companies are, they're in California, they're in Virginia, they're in Chicago. So people are used to just dealing with where they are, right, geographically, as well as their functional expertise. So I brought the 4 division heads together, and they don't call them divisions for nothing, because people just work by themselves. They're divided. So brought them together, and part of the problem was revenues were down. Decisions were not being made. Project timelines were just, forget it. They weren't being met. So I brought them together, and I said, okay, I have one question. You have 2 hours to answer it together. Here's the question. What can you do right now to increase revenues immediately? Well, they looked at me and nobody said anything. And I said, okay. I handed out the magic markers. Here's the whiteboard. You have 2 hours to answer this question. So they got up kind of reluctantly. That means we have to talk to each other. And they started, writing down. And it was interesting because all of a sudden you saw the ideas flowing and flowing and flowing. The whole whiteboard was filled. And at the end of that 2 hours, they came up with one idea that immediately brought $375,000 of revenues into that company right away. And I think we talk about magic, that's the magic of teamwork. And it's just the start. They're continuing. They're actually talking and working together. It's pretty amazing. Sometimes they need a little nudge, but, for the most part, they're doing a really good job. And the CEO, Chris, came up to me afterwards and he said, that was so great. That was the best meeting we've had in years. And it made everybody feel good. So I think that example is something that we all can think about in terms of what can I do differently. When you have a company, when you are the head, when you're the leader, everybody wants to be that leader, but nobody wants to make the hard decisions sometimes. It's not, they just don't want to have that difficult conversation. The woman I talked about with the high heels, there should have been a very difficult conversation because that was not fair to the people that work for her, and it wasn't fair to her in terms of her overall behavior and how she managed her career. So sometimes these difficult decisions do have to happen. And you as the leader, you know what? You do have that. You have that power. You have that courage inside of you. Maybe you just don't know how. And that's where I can come in and help you. You know, you're at a point. Do you want to keep tossing and turning every night? Do you want your partner to say, look, I've had it, I can't sleep, go get a room? Do you want to continue the infighting, the turnover, not being able to hire the best talent because you have this workplace culture that's just not working anymore? Or do you want to make the choice? Now you can sleep and dream. And maybe you're dreaming about Haagen-Dazs, but I think maybe once you made that choice, you're dreaming about the teams and the success that you have in your company. So how can I help you? Well, I have something that's called the People Drama Scorecard. And I would love to go through this with you. It takes 20 to 30 minutes because to start with, you have to understand what's going on, right? You have to know what's happening. And this is a little tool to help you do that. We can talk about that and talk about like what is the plan to move forward, because sometimes, you know, the biggest thing is you have to have a commitment first to do it. You have to want to do it, and then I can help you with the how. So in doing that, let's work together. Let's think about and actually transform your group from the people drama to sweet teams for sweet dreams. Thank you. Thank you.